G'day everyone. Barkarati is now brought to you by Disruptor Marine Marketing, using AI to help your marine business grow. And our friends at Radix Nutrition, the most technically comprehensive nutrition products ever to exist. Unlock your potential with Radix. G'day listeners, welcome to Barkarati, the Sailing Podcast. My name's Jordan Spencer. It's that time of the week where I get to hang out with some really cool sailors, but of course I have to share the microphone with my one idiot mate and my sometimes part-time mate, who occasionally turns up on the show. So first off, let's welcome Mr. Brett Perry.
Greetings, Exalted One.
How are you, mate?
G'day, Digger.
G'day,
How you going? Hey, old Digger. Okay, bit of a reference to a very, very special weekend here in Australia. Obviously, Anzac Day officially yesterday as time of recording. A very special day for the thanks, I guess, to the servicemen and women who've looked after our shores, obviously, for many, many years. And so congratulations to all them, and I hope they all had a great day yesterday, because I can tell you, the Palace, the Drummoyne Sailing Club, they had a great day.
Yeah. So for the overseas, as for the other bloke, he's on a plane, so he's not joining us. For the overseas listeners, in Australia, you really don't highlight individual. You don't go out of your way to highlight an Australian. So there's none of this thanks for your service walking up to somebody individually. It doesn't happen like that in Australia.
No.
Absolutely not. Like a US company, there's a great story, bought an Australian company, and they tried to implement this worker of the month sort of thing. And what the Australian management did was just they had a lottery, and then they would put that up, because no way do you separate people from the pack. So what happens in Australia, there's 2 days a year. Remembrance Day in November, and then the big one is Anzac Day, which is yesterday, Anzac Day, and there's a lot of tradition. And because we don't do it every day of the year, we don't go, oh, thanks for your service. Boy, do the Australians go all out for it on Anzac Day. And one of the traditions...
Mate, I can tell you, Anzac, of course, standing for Australian New Zealand Army Corps.
Yep. So New Zealand is exactly the same. Continue, my friend. Yeah.
So it sort of was born out of World War One with the, famously the landing at Gallipoli with the Australian New Zealand Army Corps, which were there sort of as a bit of landed as a bit of a decoy to sort of help the British do what they were supposed to do. That's but in exactly the end, it was supposed to be a decoy, and don't worry about them. They'll just focus on them for a couple of months, and then we'll go around the back and do what we're going to do. Well, 4 years later.
Yeah. But anyway, so... there's a couple of traditions involved. One is dawn service. Now, I tell you, all three of us went to dawn service yesterday.
Yeah, I did. The bugle.
Yep, it's a big obligation, and we all do it, and it's mad. It's packed, and it's never diminished in size. And then there's as you said, the Palace is going off. Every pub in Australia goes off, because the two up is legal for the day. And if you don't know what two up is, look up for that. But the lines to play two up are about 4 kilometres long. It's hilarious. It's fantastic. And all the diggers with their medals and badges, they have a grand old time, and we listen to their stories. And you know what? The reason we're talking about all that is we've decided to get a guest who is a lifetime member of the Defence Forces, a Navy sailor, probably the most successful Navy competitive sailor of all time, and a man who's good with stories, BP.
Oh, absolutely. So we did think it was a good opportunity to, get someone of this caliber in and celebrate not only their career in our sport, in our sort of area, but also their chosen area of expertise.
And so, therefore, this week our guest is Rick Longbottom. Rick Longbottom, thanks for joining us on Barkarati. It's great to have you.
Pleasure to join you and your audience.
Well, it's such a special weekend for so many. We thought we better keep it in theme. So, welcome as well.
Thanks, Brett.
It was interesting. My brother had the same idea, BP. I was talking to my brother the other day, and he's going, "Oh, you should do you're going to do someone around the defence field, someone from the sailing, the Navy sailing team or something like that." And I said, "Oh, we're already there. We've got probably the best performed Defence Force sailor in history, I would suggest, Rick, if my thoughts go to it.
Oh, not for me to sort of comment on too much, but there haven't been. Well, I guess Navy didn't have a sort of sailing team that interacted with the broader community for many years. They used to run their sailing in a sort of fairly insular way with old Royal Navy dinghies called bosun dinghies.
Oh, yes.
Which were big in the UK,
yes,
but probably nowhere else other than Australia.
Yeah, I remember those things. They're quite. You could repurpose them as a bathtub, couldn't you?
It's reported they were seen planing once, but that was in Cyclone Tracy.
With no one in one.
Pretty much. They're still around. They're still sailing regularly in the UK. They still use them in the Royal Navy and across the tri-service team racing program. So they are very robust, and they serve quite reasonably for a training boat, and particularly good if you're doing match or team racing, because it doesn't matter what the performance of the boat is as long as they're all much the same.
Before we...
I guess, sorry, Jay, just quickly, I guess, for the international listeners, this weekend is very, very big in Australia. It's our commemoration of servicemen and women who have served throughout New Zealand and Australia in various wars, ranging from World War I right through to current day. Is there a tight sort of knit community within the sailors? Does that sort of make sense?
Certainly there is, and I guess it does cut across the full range from dinghy sailors to yacht sailors, and others who cruise. So I think the Defence Force Sailing Association tries to address those sort of different characteristics. And of course, Defence uses yachting for adventurous training from time to time. It's been part of the program for a number of years, and still goes on today. And it's probably evolved further in more recent times with the advent and support of programs like Sailability, and there's a couple of other ones that Army have triggered to try to help repatriate injured and psychologically and physically injured servicemen and women.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big deal, the commitment to go into the armed forces, and I'm interested for you, Rick. There's sort of two journeys we want to find out from you. One is, why did you start sailing, and two, why did you go into the Navy? Were you always going to be a Navy man, that sort of thing?
No, not at all. I had no great sort of interest or aspirations in that regard. Although I had a sort of family history of army or police service, so service life was not unknown to me from a point of view of my father was in the Second World War in the army, and uncle was a fairly high-ranking police officer. So that was not a surprise. And I think on my mother's side, there was also servicemen in Air Force and Army. But I think I had only link with Navy was an uncle by marriage. So he was sort of a Royal Navy of Welsh background. But I sort of learnt to sail, first started sailing in about second form high school, which is, what's that now, equivalent to about year 7 or 8.
Yep. Year 8, yep.
And it was just an invite from another friend at school who asked me to come and sail his boat. And I had visions of a yacht on Sydney Harbour, and having grown up in Sydney. And
meanwhile, it's a rainbow.
No, it was a flying ant.
Oh, perfect. Even smaller.
Even smaller, and just the name had me in stitches. I thought, how silly, what a stupid name for a boat.
Of course.
But that was down at Double Bay Sailing Club in the days well before the lasers took precedence there. And it was a mixed sort of class of Australian sort of design things, MJs, herons. There was a sailfish there from memory. Anthony Scarley sailed. There were some moths, flying ants, and a great camaraderie of young kids. And these were a bunch of kids that I went to school with at Sydney High. So that had me hooked pretty quickly. Sort of the joy of just getting out on a boat and being up front on a flying ant was great fun.
Yeah.
But it didn't take me long to sort of want to do something more than just cruise around Sydney Harbour. And my mate wouldn't race the boat, and there was a flying ant fleet round at Rose Bay at Wallara Sailing Club, and I just couldn't convince him to go and race. So I got very frustrated and complained bitterly to my parents that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, and eventually they agreed that they would buy a boat, and we had to look at what sort of options there were. And Double Bay was fine from me. I went to Sydney High, but it was a sort of 3-bus trip, I think, to get from Maroubra, where I lived, to Double Bay. So we looked at what was on more locally, and the closest club was Yarra Bay 16-foot Skiff Club down on the northeast corner of Botany Bay.
Yeah.
So, and the classes they sailed there were Savos and Flying 11s for youngsters. Mm-hmm. Then they had skates and 16-foot skiffs. So Flying 11 it was. And my parents bought myself and 2 sisters a sort of a joint sort of present, which was a Flying 11, and that kicked off my sailing on my own career with sisters initially, and then school friends, and at a very unusual club as it was down at Yarra Bay.
Yeah. Wow.
How did the sailing with your sisters go? Did that did that cause some interesting moments?
BP, you picked it. Well, I was Captain Bligh to one and Terrifying to the other. So they weren't keen on it.
Bit of mutiny?
No, I think they enjoyed the sort of the process and getting out on a boat, but the racing side of it didn't float their boat. So, and competition was what I enjoyed, even though I wasn't particularly, good at it at that stage. And these are the days there was no coaches, there was no real, education programs. It was Lou Dalpuget's Successful Sailing, and then a sequence of more advanced books, Stuart Walker type stuff in the years following. So it was self-help, teach yourself, and just spend time on the water.
I guess that.
I remember those books, BP.
Frank. Hey, I'm just thinking about the time that Frank Bethwaite's book came out too, and being a Navy person and into technical stuff, I guess that book would have been an interesting read for you, because I can tell you I could only get through page 1.
Oh, well, I'd been through most of it because Frank sent the drafts to me. I was reviewing the drafts for him to add sort of perspectives and share some of his initiatives. And I recall one of them was called the Stability Index, which I sort of we did blind testing of it at the Nationals in Port Stephens for the tasers back in about 1980 something or other. And we came to the conclusion that his Stability Index was absolutely on the money and was a fantastic tool.
Yeah, he was on the money. Old Frankie was a legend in sailing for sure.
Certainly was.
So, well, you've raised the taser as a discussion point. Did you get into tasers before Navy or as a result of Navy?
As a result of Navy. Yeah. That's an interesting part of the program, I suppose. After the Flying 11s, I went into skates at Yarra Bay and mucked around with those. So I think I was probably the only person to ever go from a Flying 11 to a skate. They're sort of from the sublime to the ridiculous.
I was just I'll just explain for the overseas listeners. The skate there's not many of them around anymore, but they had the double planks. So for those who know the international canoe class with the plank, it's a double plank setup and quite flat planing sort of hull with fully battened main and all that sort of thing. That's correct, I'm sure.
Yeah. So unusual sort of background. I suppose I was sailing skates and I think then a 470 just before I joined the Navy. But I joined the Navy as an undergraduate mechanical engineer, which they referred to as a marine engineer. And in my first year or so at uni, I was asked to come in from uni to help them do an evaluation for a new class of boat to replace the bosun dinghy. Wow. And I think, Jordan, you would appreciate how Defence does procurement. They don't do it by halves. They don't go and find a few things they like and test them and say, oh, that's really good, we'll have some of those. They put out a specification and they determine the 1,000,001 requirements that they might wish to have in this perfect, ideal asset that they wish to procure. And that's exactly what they did with the replacement for the bosun dinghy. And a few of the key elements there were they wanted them to be more modern, able to be handled by two adults, good training boat, but could be used from training through to racing. And part of this, was to open up the Navy's and the Defence Sailing Program to international level competition as opposed to a domestic or a very insular program which the boat and dinghy provided. So I was sort of, asked to skip lectures from uni and zip across to Balmoral on a couple of occasions to help with the evaluation. And they'd down selected 6 classes to review as a short list of contenders, and they included boats back in the late 70s, perhaps early 80s. Taser was one of them. 470, Corsair, I think the Laser 2, and from memory, something called a Springbank 4.2, which was a locally designed hull from Canberra. Yes, it was very unusual. Of course, some of the criteria was it had to be 2-person lift and carry without breaching sort of, weightlifting rules. And that knocked out things like the Corsair. Even the 470 was pretty hard for 2 people to carry. The Taser, was just streets in front at about, sort of 60, 68 kilo hull weight. Rig probably a bit higher than that. And the Springbank 4.2, I think you needed a forklift, but I can't recall. It actually sank in the trials, so it didn't get. It got scrubbed pretty quickly.
That was an easy decision, that one.
Easy decision, and it was something designed by an ex-British sort of individual with aspirations of gaff rigs and I suppose a cruising boat. So anyway, the Taser won that selection hands down, and everyone thought this is really progress. They're going to get serious about a race boat that can be used for team racing and that type of thing. But somebody insisted that they had to have a reefing arrangement in them for bad weather or for less experienced people. So the Tasers ultimately ended up having some reef points in the main that you could drop down, which in a later period I sailed a world championship with reef points in it, which was a bit embarrassing. But anyway, they selected the Taser, and then about a year later, they were going through all the process of finalising this deal. I was asked to go and do the trials again. Right. So I had to skip some more lectures and got shimmied across to Balmoral by one of the Rance club members in their powerboat. And they did the trial again. And the reason they did the trial again was the owner of this, or the designer of the Springbank 4.2, complained bitterly that the trial hadn't been done, appropriately, and it misrepresented the superior performance of his boat.
Dear, oh dear.
So we had to go and redo the trial with all the same boats, including the Springbank 4.2.
I'm assuming Frank Bethwaite's present with all this.
Frank was around because he was demonstrating the Taser. I went out with him in the Taser, along with Phil Darby. They were the 2 reps. And I remember Chris Sutherland was there with the 470s. I can't remember some of the other players, but the Springbank 4.2 stuck in my mind because the owner was there, or the designer, and he apparently was a personal friend of one of the admirals in Canberra, and he'd managed to unstitch the whole procurement program and force a retrial. A rerun. It came last again, as you might predict, and the Taser was born as the selected boat, and it took a while. They think it was 88 boats in the original build program, which would have kept Frank Bethwaite quite happy.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think ultimately there was many more built, and the boats were distributed to any of the locations we had naval bases. And I think we gifted about a dozen to New Guinea, which were up in both Port Moresby and Manus from recollection.
Yep.
So we had an instant fleet that was distributed probably in the late 83, 84, sort of 85 seasons. And that meant that suddenly the Navy went from having boats and dinghies to a lightweight, high-performance, brand new aerodynamic, hydrodynamic skiff sailing boat, which for any of us who've sailed, performing classes in Australia, it was a compromise,
Right.
but it was a good compromise,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
They still
offered,
are to this day.
high performance, and it still is a high performance boat today. So it was great, and for people like me, there was like Yahoo. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
A sponsor.
Yeah, sponsor Navy. And it was. I mean, obviously, it must have done your career no end of success, mate. Being part of the selection committee and coming up with such a successful boat. The Taser out of that fleet has gone on to big numbers, and great competition. And I suspect it would be attractive for people who are sailors joining the forces, knowing that they could jump on a Taser, and have a good time.
Yes, but I suppose it's like most things. There are critics on every element of defence procurement. It's never perfect, and I think there were people who complained that they were too fragile or too flighty, and there's an element of truth in that. And I think when we were doing the selections, we strongly recommended that they hold on to boats and dinghies because they are basically indestructible, and keep those for initial training so that you get through that initial program of people breaking things and develop some skills before they get let loose in a Taser. They chose not to do that. They liked the idea of just having a single class to manage. So the bosuns were either sold off or transferred to cadet units. Some existed for quite some years afterwards, but they weren't in the Navy's inventory.
Still a good call. And of course, my memory of, I think, in our phone call, Rick, that your name has always been at the front of the fleet since, as you said, the 80s, like you won the, effectively what was the World Championship, what was called the International Regatta in those days. You're 86 champion, so beat every other Taser sailor in the world, let's phrase it that way. Even with the reefing points in, I'm guessing they weren't there for that regatta, but,
They were.
They were. Wow, BP. Can you imagine, like, the debate in the clubhouse? Do we put reefing points in?
Well, I guess the growth of the Taser, though, effectively came from the Navy side. I mean, they like any class, you're building. It takes a while to build a class, and with the deal of having X amount of boats being made straight up, there would have been that would have added to the fleet instantly. So, I guess there would have been a lot more Navy sailors than there is now.
They weren't necessarily sailing against everyone else, though. They would be sailing internally. Was that right, Rick?
Yeah, but the class would have got a quite a big shuffle along, if you like. Oh, I've got to get one of these boats. It would have really lifted the profile, I guess. So
I'm fairly sure it did just that. I guess the first event we probably entered was the Worlds in Wallara in 1985. And that was a case of the boats had been distributed. A few people were getting hold of them inside Navy. And I was on a ship in West Australian-based destroyer and travelling through Southeast Asia most of that year. But I did come back just before Christmas of 84, and the Tasers had arrived over at East Fremantle, and managed to get hold of one, literally unpacked it, took the plastic wrap off and assembled one. And a mate and I, who was a Sharpie sailor, had one practice sail in Coburn Sound in a Fremantle Doctor, 25 knot plus, and thought this is pretty wild, and and headed across to the East Coast because I was being posted over to Canberra, and we did the Wallara event. So literally a day or so practice on Sydney Harbour, and we ended up 10th in that. That was the first event I'd sailed, first major event. And at that point, pretty well hooked, and went on after that. January 85, 10th, sailed every event, every weekend. Navy was supporting me at that stage, saying, do whatever you feel like. Here's a car, fuel card, Taser, several triple trailer. Well, pretty much, but it was only on weekends. I literally worked 5 days a week, and then took off to go sailing on the weekends, and we'd go to every event that we could in New South Wales, and ultimately won the states, the ACT Championship, the New South Wales, the Australians, and then onto the Worlds in '86. So, and then got posted back to a ship. So I had a sort of an 18-month window where I'd have to say, yes, I was pretty much a professional sailor part-time, fully sponsored, and managed to get, 4 tasers shipped to UK in a C-130 aircraft with its trailer.
Wow.
We hired a Ford Transit van and had a team manager. Wow. So the team travelled UK for 6 weeks, sailing every event we could, and pretty much I think we won most events we did compete in, including team racing events against the Royal Navy and bosuns, and came home with the trophy. I think we got first, third, sixth, and 12th or something in that Worlds. But the unfortunate part is not all planning works completely. Once again, defence. I got the boats over there with its trailer in a C-130 because they go over empty and come back full. So when they come back full, trying to get the boats back was quite challenging. And they were stuck in Queen Mary Sailing Club for quite some time and out at Royal Naval Air Station Daedalus, waiting for an opportunity to get back in a service aircraft. And ultimately, they couldn't do it, as a complete package, but they did eventually separate the tasers and slip them in as side cargo in a 707.
Yep.
So the boats came back about a year and a half later, and the trailer was donated to Queen Mary Sailing Club.
Wow. What a story. That's just insane. And I guess the one question I need to understand is everybody on the boats was Defence Force or Navy. So there was, you couldn't pick your crew. Well, you could pick your crew, but they had to be a Navy person, I'm assuming.
That's right. They were actually Navy. It was a Navy team at that stage, and it was the first time we'd run an international event. I'd actually gone over the year before to scout out how to do this because we'd never really, shipped stuff overseas. We'd never competed internationally, and it just so happened it was about the same time that we were aware that the British government was gifting the Young Endeavour to Australia as a bicentenary gift.
Okay.
And that would be delivered in 1988.
Yep.
This was 1986. In 1985, as marine engineer, I was sent over to the UK to look at the build program for the Young Endeavour and look at all the logistics support that would be required to support that vessel when it was finally handed over in the bicentennial year. So the bosses gave me approval to get a RAF flight across the UK, which was effectively what they called opportunity space available travel. And it meant that the trip took about 5 days. It was one flight crew, so they had to have crew rest on the way. So we stopped in Hawaii, on the west coast of the US, the east coast at Andrews Air Force Base, and then Briars Norton ultimately. And then they had a turnaround time of about 5 days. So I was given 5 days to travel over, 5 days to then do my work on the Young Endeavour program at Brook Marine up on the East Coast, and then do some research on the World Championship venue and logistics before
sneak over there and do some work on the World Championships, of course. Yep,
exactly. So I did all that, and I was managing the whole program until literally the day we got on a flight to go over for the event. I'd said to them I would not do the management whilst I was trying to compete. So they did organise another another commander to do the race or the organisational management from the time we left. So I was removed of that obligation and able to concentrate on the sailing, which was a pretty good deal from my perspective.
It's such an amazing story, isn't it? It's so cool.
So we're at the beginning of the TASAR, if you like, as a class. You've established yourself as quite a performer in the fleet. And the Navy also, as I said, the fleet grew rapidly. I mean, it was a hotly contested fleet. How did that go over the coming years? Because it attracted some awesome sailors.
It certainly did. And I think, it attracted a lot of attention. I think in the Sydney Worlds in '85, there were a lot of good players there. Charlie McKee won it in a tie with Norm Ridge and Ollie Stein.
My mate, Normie Ridge.
Tie. Yeah, great Normie Ridge, yep.
Yeah.
And Ollie Stein, who I went to school with and learnt to sail at Double Bay with. So I think the Derby was third. They're all big names that were there, but it was one of probably the second or third time Charlie had won the Worlds. So the McKees were sort of the gun group, and they sort of were enamoured by the boat, by Frank Bethwaite, and they sort of had a Seattle group that very strong performers in the Tasers, and they loved the class, and they still do. But between Jonathan and Charlie, they'd won the Worlds umpteen times. They're almost unbeatable until we managed to knock them off over in UK, which has been one of those sort of fun things I've been able to gloat about for years. That for a long, long time, I was the only non-American that had beaten a McKee to a World Championship.
Wow.
And it was sort of a nice one to sort of just gently...
Definitely a feather in the cap.
Well, it's good fun to be able to say that, but that record's now been equalled by at the last Worlds in Lake Garda. Nick, what's his name? OK Sailor. Has just won the Worlds in
mental blankets. I know the guy, fantastic sailor. He's
fantastic sailor, yeah. And he and his crew, Toby Fantastic, won the event, beating Jonathan and Libby McKee. So he's now only the second human that's beaten the McKees to a World Championship. Others have won a World Championship, but it's when the McKees weren't there. So we sort of have a bit of a giggle over that. Yeah, a little bit of loophole.
That is funny. That is very funny. Yeah. Very, very famous, talented sailor. So yeah. Nick Craig.
But back to
Nick Craig.
Nick Craig. That's it. Nick Craig. Excellent.
Yeah.
Toby Lewis. Yep. Anyway, they did attract big fleets after that relatively small fleet in UK. The next Worlds was in '88 up at Yeppoon. Oh, yeah. Great venue, plenty of water. 120 boats, I think, were the numbers for that event. And we had a Navy patrol boat as a start boat,
wow.
Which attracted a lot of attention. And I was reminded just recently, visiting Glenn and Vanessa Collings, that they had a 40mm shell that was used as the heat winner trophies for every race in that event, and they were engraved with the boat winner. I have one. The Collings had one. I noticed in their foyer when I was visiting it last year, and it was fantastic. The crew of the patrol boat, got into the swing of it.
How was the wind shadow at the boat end?
That was exactly what I was going to say. There was two problems, two negatives. The wind shadow was significant, and you needed near defenders.
Oh yeah. Wow.
So 40mm, both were going off. Was you had no
a bit deafening.
no doubt at the other end of the line when the start was.
Even if it was 30-degree biased at the boat end, everyone's down the pin end. Can't be up there.
Well, you'd think that would be the case, but on one race it was a pin end bias, and one of the Navy sailors, Peter Caldwell, took the bold step of port tacking the 120 boat fleet. And it was the bicentenary year. Mm. He had Taser 1988 sail number.
Wow.
And he had a big emblazoned logo on it, and he did a port tack start. Unfortunately, a photographer picked up that shot, and it's one of those classics. Every time I see the photo, I just think, what a bold move and what a fantastic venue to do it at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
I actually did a bit of time in Taser. I was out of Wallara and spent a bit of time with Frank about when the Mylar sales came out. Actually, was very late in the piece, but that was my experience with Frank. He basically came out of the shed one day and he said he's got this Taser lying down on its side with a Mylar sail. He wanted to test the leach profile of the mast with this new sail, and he had 4 10-litre water bottles, and he hung them at various points along the mast and watched what the reaction to the leech was. And I was his helping hand, and that was his way of working out how to make the sail.
Yep, it was very practical in a lot of those techniques he used. Some with wind tunnel testing and very advanced, and other things were pretty simple.
Yeah, I love it. I'm interested, Rick. You allude to Defence Forces, Navy. There's a culture. The way you learn things, the way you do things. You get to do some amazing things, but there's also a way of communicating and the camaraderie because you're together. You live a life together. We think one of the things that we love on the water is the banter, where the conversation between boats and how you can psych each other out. I wonder, was there any specific Navy terminology that you could use as a weapon on the course, or were you
verbal?
Well, yeah, I was just trying to, like, the psychological warfare. Were you well trained in that? Is I guess
psychological warfare.
Well, unlike perhaps if you're alluding to the way cricketers carry on the field,
that sort of thing. Yeah.
It's not often that you're close enough to take advantage of that unless you're team racing. And then in team racing, I suppose there's a bit of that, but I would have thought it's more about communicating with your team members than trying to psych out the opposition.
Yeah.
I think we tended to be quiet. I'd be more, sort of special forces type of quiet, and not wanting to give away. Not giving away what you're up to or what you might be seeking to do.
Stealth mode.
So you've gone away from the old traditional drunken sailor, and you're into the special forces, hiding sniper type of activity.
Well, I wouldn't abandon the drunken sailor side of it because I came from skates. So
I've got this classic sort of cartoon vision going on at the moment of these different styles of taser sailing.
No, but I suppose you do tend to work the psychological ops on people, and that's no different to what a lot of sailors will be doing when they're trying to work out what their opposition's like. If they're heavier or lighter than you, whether you go to low mode or high mode, and try to disrupt their preferred method of sailing. And I've done that a few times, and they sort of they do stick in my mind. I've a couple of events where I've had to compete against people that were of two different extremes, heavyweights and lightweights, and then tried to manipulate my sailing to maximise my chances against both of them. But that's not a regular sort of occurrence, and it probably only happens when you're at the top end of racing, and you've got to be up there yourself at the time to sort of take advantage of it.
Is there, we're talking your experience with Australian Defence Forces and Australian Navy in the taser. Are other countries using the taser, and do you have like an international battle through Defence Forces in your sailing?
Not in an organised way. From time to time, we've done those sort of events. As I mentioned earlier, we did team race against the Royal Navy back in the 80s, or 86 Worlds. And we did invite a Royal Navy dinghy team out to the Nationals in Darwin in, can't quite remember what it was, probably in the 90s. So we took 6 extra boats up to Darwin, and invited a Royal Navy team out to do that event, and they had a great time. So we did some team racing beforehand. And these sailors were really first class sailors. One of them was went on to be part of the winning team for the World Team Racing Championships. So these are quality sailors, and they had a great time. We managed to do all of the sort of social things you'd like to do with a visiting defence team. And we had a member sort of hanging about with them at the end of the championship to help them, do some touring down to Catherine, down to the RAF base down there, and then back up to Darwin and the Crocodilis Park and those things. The only problem that the Royal Navy team had was that their manager got the departure flight mucked up, and they missed their flight back to the UK. And when they were sort of pleading for support to get back, their sort of host Navy sort of went, "You stuffed up, you pay." So they end up having to fork out one-way flights back to the UK, which probably put a little dampener on their Northern Territory experience.
Geez, you couldn't get two more diverse climates and cultures than the UK and Northern Territory, could you? You know, like that must be one hell of a shock to the system.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, it is for us too, but they were fairly impressed that they had crocodile insurance certificates handed out to all competitors at that event. Part of the the sort of the warped Northern Territory sense of humour, and some of them were a little bit concerned that this was a necessary adjunct to their sailing program.
Yeah. I
But
remember.
we haven't done too many of these. We haven't done too many of these sort of events because they're not easy to organise, and they're not always supported by the services, depending on what's going on at the time. But there are periodically yachting ones as well, where we try to get yachting teams together between Australia, New Zealand, and the Royal Navy. We've done some inter-service racing against the US when we did a World Championship in Vancouver. We had a team going across, so we stopped in Hawaii and did some team racing against the US Navy in Hawaii and then on to Vancouver. But they're the main ones I've done. And I think there's occasionally we had potential for some engagement with the Japanese teams.
Wow. It
I love
sounds
it.
fun. So much fun, doesn't it, BP?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'm just sort of thinking, obviously, work aside, I mean, the Defence Force is a real career, and obviously sailing inside that is an activity that not all of them would get into. But is there still a big push nowadays with the younger generation? Is there still programs on, or is it sort of faded a bit?
It's not, I guess, at the same level that I experienced when we first got the tasers, because when they brought that sailing program in, they were trying to increase, I guess, recruiting retention. They were trying to address the concerns of some of the newer sailors coming in. They were also recognising that community engagement was an important part of defence. And as well as the 88 or so tasers in that original procurement, there were 3 yachts, 3 Swarbrick S111 boats, and they were effectively placed in 3 locations, 2 in Sydney, 2 in HMAS Cerberus in a Western Port, and 1 in WA. I think the WA one came up a bit later. It was moved over there to support sailing in the West. And part of that was to get team building, adventurous training programs. They weren't there for racing because they weren't particularly well suited for handicap-wise racing, PHS. But they were robust, they were big, and they could take a fair-sized crew. And that was all about getting people used to life at sea, working together.
Well, you mentioned team building. I mean, that if you look at yachting across the board, it's a huge facet. And I guess on a bigger scale, the Defence Force is all about teams. I mean, that's how it is.
That's spot on. And yet, surprisingly, at times, Defence and certainly Navy go through programs where they decide that it's not necessary, or they kill off the program.
Right.
And it
that was sort of my question. I mean, is it something that the people that are running these shows see as merit? Because ultimately I think it is, but then again, who cares about me?
Well, I have had the same situation. One of my great frustrations over my time in the career has been the waxing and waning of that level of support, or the failure to recognise the benefits that come from these sort of programs where they are actually low cost, to get people experienced and more aware of life at sea in all its facets, and effectively a sail training boat is a much cheaper asset to deploy than a destroyer and all the people who sail within it. So
yes.
It's a no-brainer from my perspective, but I don't always get to dictate to the hierarchy how the taxpayers' dollars are best spent. I'll have a view, and I guess I will never change my view on it. And there are many, many people who would, push that same line. But at times, depending on the budget constraints and the hierarchy, these programs get tailored down or terminated, and they reduce sort of the sail training just to the 2 ports that bring in the new members, be it Creswell for officer training and down at Cerberus for the sailor training. And
Yeah.
and my view is if you introduce people to sailing at that point, you've got to have something for them to migrate to when they go into the broader fleet or into their shore jobs. And that's where these taser and yacht programs provided that sort of continuous engagement. We went through a stage where they cut that off, and I was motivated at that point with a couple of colleagues to set up another sailing association, which was called Navy Sailing. And we sort of salvaged about a dozen tasers from the auctions, and I got hold of one of the yachts. That two yachts were going to go to auction, and I got secured one and secured a mooring at Ranser in Rushcutters Bay for the boat. And then we tried to hang on to those boats and get them insured and funded so that we could continue to provide a sailing service for those who had moved from training programs into the fleet. We managed to have, I think, 4 boats in WA stashed away in a container, and about 12 boats were sitting down in Canberra that we could move around, at will to with volunteers to get them available for people, and the one yacht.
It's super cool. I mean, I find it really interesting. The ability, like when we talk about young kids to young kids, or we talk to parents about training young kids, one of the lines we use is it's the greatest university a child could have is to go sailing. Like it teaches you so many skills, whether it's workplace skills or how to work with things and make things and repair things and so on. And so that, to me, that's the same whatever age you are. You're always going to learn from the ability. Going sailing gives you so many things. People talk about cost, but it really just gives and gives and gives as a sport. So it's a good thing. You want to say something, Rick? I'll let you continue, but...
Well, yes. I mean, you just trigger a couple of thoughts, and you may be aware of Australian Sailing's sort of support for a WA training program called Sail Lab,
yes,
where it's a fantastic program, and it's one of those. It's the epitome of how to introduce young people from whatever background to a whole raft of, technologies and skills that come from a sailing program, be it from the sailing itself, the weather and tides, to the hydrodynamics, aerodynamics, and the technical elements of sailing. Everything from dinghies through to the high performance foiling boats. So Sail Lab is one of those ones I've been gradually trying to push in with Royal Navy, and with some support from Australian Sailing, are keen to see that get some foothold. And they need to have, funded organisations that can put some resources behind those programs. And it's one I'd like to see happen. It hasn't all been bad for defence lately. Sorry?
You've gone. Go on.
It hasn't all been bad for defence lately, because even though the Australian sort of training program that I set up with Navy Sailing has got limited sort of capability, they did try to improve the sail training elements by getting back into the Sydney Hobart race with Navy One, a new boat that was procured, second-hand boat procured.
Benet's first 40 was owned by the Hutchinson's family, and I've done some miles at sea on that one. I know it well.
You know it well. And of course, Army is now upgraded to a similar boat. So they've got 2.
It's going to be on this year, then, you're saying?
Well, what hope have the Army got, really?
Be careful.
we did name a drink after them. We had a lot of fun with the Army boys on this show in the past. The Rum Runner title. That's
the one.
Continue on, sir. Yes.
Well, I can't claim. I've never raced against the Army in those sort of boats. Not being I don't tend to stay in dinghies. That's the limit of my capacity. But I'm sure they have a gypsy good time when they're out there.
They definitely do. I can tell you that we have a good time with a bit of banter between on the show with the Army versus the Navy. So it adds to our Sydney Hobart coverage every year. Yeah. So hopefully they're both there this year.
I do want to highlight a couple of things here, Rick. You raised, so I'll return the serve. In terms of Sail Lab, we're very much keen to what you said. Critical.
I was going to say, Jay, that I reckon that was the world's biggest segue right there.
Yeah. So with Salab, we're 100% getting them on the show. We're trying to pull that together. That is just something we're into Salab. For the listeners who are corporate organisations, make sure you tune into that one because there's going to be real value in that Salab. That whole Salab program is a game changer and it will be adopted globally. I can see that happening. Really important. The second and more important point, I've had an idea for you in how to market and get some more funding for the dinghy program, Rick. Latest defence.
Here we go. Sit down. This will be good.
Defence strategy paper talks about an increase in littoral movements, littoral boats. Every dinghy in the world's a littoral boat. It always has to touch shore, so it fits the defence strategy. So maybe we should take that to them.
Well, you open another sort of Pandora's box there. I was surprised in some of my work that I was dealing with autonomous underwater vehicles, and there's a product out there at the moment that's sort of been gaining some attention. That's a system called Blue Bottle, which is yes. Well, I was surprised to find when discussing it with Mark Bethwaite. Being a laser sailor, I'd catch up with him at various events, and he kept asking me about did I know certain people who were involved in trials and the like, and sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But it turned out that Mark designed the trailer that the Blue Bottle is launched from, and part of the rationale was this autonomous lingering vessel was to be able to be deployed anywhere around the Australian coast or internationally. And of course, who better to get to do something like that than one of the best weights. To work out that you can launch this thing at virtually at every boat ramp in Australia.
Correct.
And it gives it, quite significant littoral capability.
Yes, absolutely.
And as abalone poachers will tell you can put boats in anywhere and nobody knows you're there.
Yeah. I will say that the Blue Bottle, the vessel you're talking about and the organisation behind it, I think half the Australian youth sailing team work there these days. It's such a...
Yes.
It is a very successful program, and I know quite a few of the team in there. So, I'm interested. There's one question I do have for you, sir. You've seen some great sailing locations around the world, and you've also visited by ship some great locations. Do you have a preference, and a contrast? Like we like going to Hawaii for the teams racing because why not? And then, another port that you might have preferred by ship.
Oh, I think the standout sailing venue would have to have been Lake Garda, which I did the Worlds there. Our 50th anniversary Taser Worlds was at Lake Garda last July.
Correct.
And that is just awe-inspiring. Fantastic location. And the conditions were pretit good. And as I think there's another podcast where Nick Craig, talking to Alistair Murray, had commented that it was a fantastic venue, and it wasn't probably at its strongest, but it was consistent wind, which he found to be somewhat to his advantage. He was never tested in the light weather stuff that the Taser is particularly tricky to sail in.
Yeah.
And so, he's a big human with a lightweight crew, and he was almost unstoppable in anything at full hiking conditions.
Yes.
But it's just spectacular. The venue is spectacular, yes. And the racing was great. So that would be probably the standout from my perspective. I wouldn't say there's places that I didn't like. Any time I get in a boat, I'm happy to be there.
Yeah.
I sail on Lake Burley Griffin, so that's probably tells you enough.
It's all upside from there. I've sailed
Is there sailing there?
Yes. Quite passionate sailing. 2 yacht clubs on that lake.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, the interesting part there is people sort of knocked it, but it was a freshwater lake.
Yeah.
And I was sailing there in my preparation for the 86 Worlds. That's where I did that 18 months ashore in Defence Headquarters. So I think I got used to sailing in light, shifty, flat water, freshwater, and the Taser Worlds that in that season were in the UK on a reservoir, the Queen Mary Reservoir near Windsor.
Yeah.
And so that was a freshwater reservoir. And not that it was light, but it changes things. Saltwater versus freshwater, there is a difference in the way the boat feels, performs, and hydrodynamically. So it does make a difference. And so I'd never knock any venue. They all have different characteristics, as you guys would appreciate, and learning about the weather or the wind conditions, the meteorology of the area, as well as the tides, currents, or other. It's just fantastic to have a variety of those conditions to sail in.
It's so cool. It's such a good conversation, isn't it, BP? I'm enjoying it immensely. I don't want it to end. I do have to ask, I think we are sort of coming to the end of the time, but I do have to ask one question, and BP, I don't know if you have any more, but what does a Navy man do once he retires?
I don't know.
I was just wondering if you thought about that, like, are you going to go sailing and cruising?
I have done that. I've been helped a friend take a boat up to the Whitsundays a couple of years ago. I thought that was kind of good fun. Having not done a lot of yachting and never had the time to sort of spend days at sea, but I did just help another friend take a Bavaria 44 around Tasmania as part of the Van Diemen's Land Cruise, which is an organised rally or cruise. A number of yachts.
That would have been spectacular.
Sorry?
That would have been spectacular.
Oh, it's fantastic. It was eye-opening, and doing the west coast of Tasmania and taking time in those remote locations, and Sarah Island, and then I think the fact we landed a 1.2 metre yellowfin tuna off South Cape was... It was just adds to it. And I mean, the challenge of trying to bring a fish that size into the back end of through the sugar scoop on a Bavaria was something else to behold, as well as learning about the technique for pacifying a fish, which is to pour rum in its gills. If you're aware of that one. Not the Kraken, but awesome. That was entertaining. So I'll probably do a bit more of that. And as I have more time, I've jumped into other classes. I sort of had a bit of fun sailing an aero, as well as lasers, tasers. So you can fill up a race program fairly well with those three classes. Absolutely. And then throw in a bit of cruising.
Yeah, perfect.
Sounds awesome.
Mate,
what I would like to see more of, it'd be team racing. Yep. And we didn't sort of cover it, but I've got to sort of point out this is one of the major things the Navy did back in the 80s, with the support of, people like Martin Lindsley, who initiated team racing, I would have said back in Australia, back in those days. He was ex-Royal Navy, came to the Australian Navy, when he was still quite young, but came with a passion for team racing that he'd learnt in the Royal Navy. And we triggered, by virtue of having a big fleet of boats in Rushcutters Bay at the time, we ran a thing called the Navy Invitation Team Racing Championship in Sydney. Mm-hmm. And we do that every May. And initially it was just taser clubs in the Sydney area were invited, and they would have to bring their own boats. Well, some of them didn't like to bring their own boats, so they'd get potentially beaten up a bit. So we sort of took on and just basically sponsored an event where we provided all the Navy tasers. We had pontoons out in Rushcutters Bay, and we would run a team racing program over a weekend. And it grew and grew, became a state level event. Then we started to run them, states would do their own selections, and it turned into a national event. And it was then used as the program to decide Australia's team racing representative for the World Team Racing Championship. And that program, I have countless people grab me, at various events over the years and say it was one of the best events they'd ever sailed in their life, and they just wished it would be, brought back. And I'd have to point out to them, I said, we've sort of moved past that, and until some other program comes along that's going to support that, the team racing sort of transition to schools-based activity with the paces, and that's grown and has been very strong. But the sort of adult level one has languished for a number of years. But many people have, including I think Dave Page, current president of Australian Sailing, was one that I remember as a youth. He and his brother sailing that event. Plus many of your colleagues, I think Jordan from down in Adelaide Sailing Club and
Robbie
and
Jewson, Sandy Higgins, Brett Young.
Higgins brothers, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
that was the Australian team one year. Those three were the skippers, I think, one year. And I think you mixed Malcolm and Dave Page. Dave and Malcolm. Yeah, Malcolm's the Australian. Yeah. Anyway, I think I heard it wrong. You were right. I'm wrong. Yeah, but Malcolm.
Yep, and they both sailed together. Yeah, they both sailed together. Yeah. In fact, that event, we'd won it several times as the Navy team. We had quite a good team with Stewie Schimmel, Martin Lindsley, and myself.
Yeah.
And every year that we won it, they did get to send, the Worlds didn't go ahead. Then finally the year that did go ahead, the South Australians beat us. We were second.
Yeah.
And we thought, we're still going to get to go, but that one got canned. And then the next year they did get to go. So we were pretty frustrated that, we sort of led the push there. But unfortunately, they sort of, OH&S and a bunch of other criteria curtailed that program. And that's one I wished that would be resurrected.
Well,
bloody awesome.
Great passion for sailing, which I love. I'm so happy that we got this chance to have a chat, Rick. And I think we could chat for another couple of hours, and maybe we'll come back to you because I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this conversation. There's plenty more to talk about, but your experience and your knowledge. And for those who are interested in a Defence Force career, then obviously you can take on the sailing. That's part of the program, offshore dinghy. But yeah, again, mate, thanks so much for spending your Sunday morning with us. Thanks for all you've done over your career. And
I was about to say, from a formal standpoint, thank you for your service over the years. And obviously, it's a good weekend. It's a good weekend I'm being serious, for celebrating that. So that's why we sort of thought we'd go down this path. And so thank you very much.
Appreciate that. And thanks guys for running the podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers. As we said at the start there, Bud, great number of stories, a bit of fun there. I loved it.
As you said, could go on forever because I'm, like every sort of person in the force, although it's a very serious, there's a serious aspect to it. I guess there's moments that they will never forget that probably led to some pretty funny stuff.
Oh, yeah. It was a fantastic conversation, and you can see Rick is absolutely passionate about trying to help the sport and do what's best, and he approaches it from an informed perspective as a talented sailor, but also how to run and organise things. You can hear the way he talks and how he thinks. That was coming across very clearly. I do wonder, Bud, just as an aside, do you reckon Australian Navy might actually have ever considered Radix nutrition as part of their thing? Because they do that whole outdoor and adventure thing. So when you need that vitality in the field, whether you've got.
I guess this is a bit of a plug for Radix, but one thing they are working on right now is ration packs, which basically is going to be worked on throughout the Defence Forces, but can be purchased privately. So things like a ration pack that's actually set up for various time frames.
Right.
So that's perfect for sailing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're saying, okay, I need a ration pack for 10 people for 4 days, you can have it all set up for you.
Yeah. Amazing. I wonder if Disruptor Marine Marketing could work with the Navy as well, when they're the boats at sea.
Does the Navy ever go on break?
And they want to make sure that they get all the calls and messages. So yeah. So, but
they get some pretty important messages, so.
If you've got a marine business anywhere in the world and you want to make sure that your business grows or not miss any leads or opportunities, then just check out the crew at Disruptor Marine Marketing, DISRUPTA.
That's the key, isn't it? You just don't want to miss things these days. And with how busy we are, majority of the people in our industry hands-on. I mean, answering the phone sometimes can be an absolute pain because you're covered in resin, or you're cutting things, or you're out to sea or whatever. So don't miss calls, don't miss leads.
So disruptormarinemarketing.com.au, jump on that website, and if you do want the Radix, you can use Barkarati as the discount code if you jump onto their website for us as well. All right, if we move on to upcoming events, there's a bit going on, obviously, at the moment. There's plenty coming up. We've talked about much of it in the past. Do want to highlight in the US, up in the capital of sailing up there, Newport, up in Newport, Rhode Island. They've got their race week coming up in July. Just wanted to highlight that for those who are interested. I know there'll be a whole range of different vessels going there. I sort of was looking at a bit of VX1 stuff this week, and I know the VX1 class will be up there en masse. We've got them.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Newport's a great place. Good, like that bay, Narragansett Bay, is a great little spot to go for a yacht. The med program that we ran through last week, if you want to check that last week's episode, you can hear all the different events that are on. We highlighted a few. And at the moment, Port Stephens still continues on, BP.
It's week 2 of week 3. So week 2 being obviously the IRC stuff. Sort of more, it's the fast 40s, the TP52s, and sort of the higher level racing boats. And some sort of running sort of situation is Matador. The TP52 seems to be the one at the moment to beat. So they're having a good regatta. One standout in IRC was in Division 2 was actually a Beth Wade boat, the 89er.
Yeah, the 89er. I saw that. They're second or something.
Second in IRC, which is a huge result for an off the trailer sports boat. So it's great to see. So it's like I said, there's lots of new designs and lots of new philosophies, and if Julian will be well happy with what's going on there.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Listener of the Week, the Jack Lloyd Listener of the Week, presented by our friends at Vycobi. What did you think? We got some caps sent to us during the week just to see what they look like with Bar Karate logos on. Did you like them, BP?
Oh, they're awesome.
They're awesome. We have to debate that a bit more, how we want the logo to look and all that sort of stuff. But if we worked out that trying to have lots of different sizes of things is an expensive way to do clothing, but we might just do some caps. And our friends at Vycobi are looking at providing that all for us. So if you're into doing corporate wear for your boat or for your business, Vycobi do that. So don't be scared to give them a call. Jump on the website. They do it really well, and they're so good. They're so helpful. I just cannot.
Oh, absolutely.
They've been so good to us.
Send in a bit of artwork, and they'll have it all come back to you. But I'm saying that, why don't you just buy one of our caps?
Oh yeah. Well, people, if they love us, they'll buy it. So it's all cool. We got some great emails this week. We got so many messages. We've been inundated actually. For all the Instagram messages, we're just touching on a few of the emails, maybe 3 or 4, just quickly because that's what we want to do. The first one is we're going to highlight Dave World. Afternoon, Jordan, BP and PTB, part-time boss. Thanks for the Listeners of the Month crown. I'm not full-time on the bow, so don't be too disappointed, BP. We'll confirm my average performance in greater detail should you ask him. I provided the real bowman off the regatta much entertainment back at the bar. I didn't put 2 and 2 together until BP said, you write into our show. No wonder his voice sounded so familiar. So he hadn't worked out that you were BP from Bar Karate, is what he's saying.
Well, like we are a podcast, and we know that we generally have faces for audio. So not many people know what we look like, but they know what we sound like.
That was very cool. Actually, that's true. Like we get that. I get that a lot myself. I know your voice from somewhere. Yeah. Great week at.
Look, to be honest with you, mate, Dave. We had a great week up at Port Stephens, and he did say that he was not a full-time bowman, but look, it was a very tricky race course because it was passage racing. So you're not doing windward lewards. You're not thinking. It's not like, that's going to be a job set or that's going to be this or that. There was a lot of, this could be a 0 or it might not be a 0. Okay, let's set it up anyway. And it was one of those things.
I write a little program. I go through the poll. I write a little program. So when I step on the boat, I know exactly what sail it's going to be depending on what they've got in their bag. That's how I do it. Just do all the maths before sailing. He did highlight it was a lot of fun, and he said they had some laughs, including late night story time with one Bradshaw Kellett on DJ duties. Enjoy the show as always. Great chat with Richard. Poor bloke is still quite German, isn't he? Very literal. It was fantastic. Lovely to hear. Here's a good one for you again, BP. You're featuring here. Aloha, lads. This is from Aaron Suchitori. I really enjoyed the episode the other week on the Pacific Cup. Excellent. I wanted to write to tell you
Good
more
feedback
about
that, because that show is because it's an event, it's kind of an interesting chatting about an event. But yeah, go on.
Wanted to tell us about more about the Canoe Yacht Club. This is interesting. Our youth sailing program has a ton of success in the last few years. First, a huge shout out to WASP World Champions Gavin Bell and Pearl Latanzi, both based out of our yacht club, with our top tier training program. Also a shout out to Bodie, the youngest WASP competitor at the games, and Canoe Yacht Club Open Skiff Phenom. He's only 12 years old. Makani Andrews also placed, I hope I pronounced that right, also placed third overall at the IQ Foil World. Fantastic. A testament to the training opportunities in wind foiling and wing foiling at the yacht club. They just started a learn to wing program where kids as young as 9 years old are starting to wing foil.
Could you imagine? Imagine being in Hawaii, being 9-year-olds going wing foiling.
Wait till you see the bay they're in, mate. It's such a beautiful place.
Oh, no, yeah.
It is the most beautiful yacht club. It is so beautiful. Our younger sailors also had a strong showing at the Open Skiff North American Regatta. The program has seen a ton of success this year, all ages, largely from the support of our sailing director and legend, Jesse Andrews. Well done, Jesse. Really excited to be hosting the Moth North American Champs this summer, August 27 to 30. BP, you should stay a little longer and watch some racing.
Don't tempt me, Aaron. Don't tempt me, I tell you.
We'll also host the Moth Worlds around the same time in 2027. Hopefully we'll get better wind than we did in 2013.
That's a long stay. I mean, I get there in end of July 26. I don't think I'll stay till August 27. Or maybe I should.
Maybe you should. It's not a hard place to spend time.
My family are coming over for a holiday. Maybe we'll just miss the plane. That's
it. Yeah, you wouldn't be the first. Not necessarily the best thing to do in the US these days. Overstay visas.
No.
A small update from.
Now I've got the red flag. The red flag's up.
Yep. Aaron's been volunteering some time by filling in and coaching the kids at the junior sailing program. The club purchased a Melders 15 as a training boat. It's been my favourite teaching tool. This is a bit of an ad for a Melders. We've had a few heavy air days where I pile two or three of the munchkins on board at the front and blast around. He sent us a video of it with an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old and him doing 15 knots downwind. So these kids are the next falling champions of the world. Since BP will be here for the Pac Cup, I want to extend an invitation to come and see all the action. If you need anything while you're here en route to Oahu, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you're not too scared, we can get you falling on Kanoe Bay with us. Pear's had the time of his life in Perth for the F18 Worlds earlier this year. Loved everything in Western Australia, and who wouldn't? Look forward to going back in November for the Moth Worlds. Sounds like a very cool dude, BP.
Well, as I said, we've got the family coming over, so we're going to be looking for things to do, Aaron. So I'm sure that we'll be able to do something.
Perfect. Here's a good one too. This is the stuff we love hearing. So James Mitchell wrote in, love the podcast with Zoe. There was some discussion around women in our sport. I have some good news. Women participation in ILCA regattas is on the rise. In the ILCA 4 class, the last two Australian champs, women made up at least 50% of sailors. And locally here in Melbourne, our last state champs at Geelong, there were 15 women in the ILCA 4 fleet of 26 and 7 women in the ILCA 6 fleet of 42. The growth of female participation is also amazing in Europe. The Euro ILCA 4 champs had 256 men, 168 women. Okay.
Awesome.
It is absolutely awesome. Eve Ramsey. I do have to mention Eve. She'd kill me if I don't. Hey team, hoping this email finds you well. Was going to send an email asking you to give the Wivenhoe, the BVSC Winter Marathon at Wivenhoe Dam in June a plug. But after listening to Ep358, obviously someone beat you to it. No, we just track everything. That was I'm interested in the Wivenhoe one. We are Charles and Eve from Doyle Sales, Queensland. There you go, free plug. We are sponsoring the Wivenhoe event, so that's why we give you the free plug. Welcome as well as competing. So I wanted to invite you to come and have some fun sailing with us. We have a stealth 8 called...
Get down there, mate.
Stealth 8 called No Dough that goes all right on the water, and we also have a pretty decent beer to sailing ratio.
Oh.
Winter Marathon's really enjoyable weekend of sailing, talking sailing, camping. So if you would like to join us, we'd love to have you on board. We aim for a fun weekend and often have the boat full of our crew, the kids, some of the crew's kids, and also can provide campfire. But you will need to bring the guitar. Talk soon.
Oh.
That's a nice invite.
Yep.
There's a very I think it's the 1st of June, that event from memory, and I think I just turn up back in the country after being away for a month, sort of thing. So we've got
I don't know about you and a guitar though. I don't know that
my
that
wife's
work.
a guitarist now. She's been playing a lot, PP. You'd be impressed.
Is she?
Yeah, she's got little calluses on her fingertips, so she's going into it.
Now.
It's hot time.
Don't need to say it. Don't need to say it.
You got me feeling hot then, BP. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw a discussion point with you. It's no boy spice, so we can run it however we want.
Yeah.
The Burgee discussion, right?
Oh, it's got legs. I'm working on it, so
Okay.
I'll come back to
But we need the yacht club. And I was trying to think what a Barcarata yacht club would look like. And this Wivenhoe discussion that Eve, email Eve sent in, I reckon we could create a yacht club, right, where you've got to be a member to do these regatta. We'll organise a regatta, and every 3 years, like we have one in New South Wales, one in Queensland, and one in South Australia, right?
and in Western Australia. Got to do Western Australia.
Well, I was just going to do it where we were based, but I'm happy to go and do one in Western Australia.
No, we'll find someone over there.
Yeah, okay, all right.
No, we've got to go big. And why don't we go New Zealand as well?
We can take it worldwide for all I care, but from a yacht club
Let's go
perspective,
worldwide. Let's just not stuff around here.
but it would make it like I was thinking if we just have one regatta a year and make it maybe like we could do it different every year, but I was thinking one where it was like a camping, everyone can get together, have beers and have a laugh and do lots of different sort of things, not make it serious.
Well, I'm sort of going to take it one step further. We could have it like a state of origin thing.
Yeah. But we could have serious racing 23% of the time, and then the rest of the time it's fun sort of races and
Yes.
things, something like that. That's how we should probably build it.
So what do? You got to have a whistle blown at 23% of an expected race, where you then got to start being silly.
Yeah. No. You do.
I get it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. We do a whole different. Races.
We know about gun smoke. We know about what happens when the gun goes, but that's all cool. But off the water, I reckon you could have a ball.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll work on that one.
Stand by Globe, because it could be a global thing. The Barcarata Yacht Club. I think it's going to happen.
Matt Sheehan has given a bunch of news away now where we didn't talk about it last week, but we can probably say a little tiny bit. The rumor about
you guys know more than I do. I just listen to the club banter at various events, and that's where I got it. And usually pretty reliable sources of banter.
All right. Well, I won't say too much. I don't want to add to it. I still want the Australian team to come out, but let's just say that there are a whole bunch of America's Cup assets that are in Australia. Okay, and if you're a big fan and you need new appliances in your kitchen or something like that, why don't you get online and buy some, and then you can, you can back the Australian team in that way by doing that. How's that for
nice? Let's leave it at that, shall we?
That was clever, wasn't it?
Want a new fridge?
Speaking of interesting things, no Sail GP in New Zealand next year, BP.
Yeah. Well, got to look after the Dolphins.
It was nothing to do with the Dolphins. It is nothing to do with the Dolphins. I happened to be in a meeting. It was really interesting. I had to bite my tongue because I was in a meeting with quite a senior member of the New Zealand government, let's just say, during the week. And she said to me, no Sail GP in Auckland this year, because we were hanging out in Auckland. And it was like, and then, that's all been reported now. So they didn't get the funding from. So the capital of New Zealand is Wellington. The local council in Auckland, we're doing it in partnership with the New Zealand government. The mayor, the Auckland mayor, extremely passionate, super keen to have it done. They worked out the logistics because obviously with the ocean race coming in at the same time, they worked out the logistics how they could make it work, but it just got knocked on the head from the at a federal level.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the money, half the money that was required, is gone away. So no SailGP in New Zealand next year, which is quite incredible.
That would be a little stinger, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a big one.
Various people.
Given they sell massive stands, it's a huge number of people. Like
that event, I'm not biased towards any sort of event, but that particular event I thought was, spectacular.
It absolutely was. It was like one of the great events on the calendar, and the Kiwis are such good fans and so knowledgeable. Like they all turn up, they're mad for it. And yeah, it's a real shame. It is a real shame, and there's nothing better than being an Aussie in Kiwi land talking about sailing and the banter that goes on. The boys and the ladies, they rip into me something wicked, and we have an absolute laugh, and I'll miss it. I'll miss it immensely because, great nation. But anyway, what else have you got? You got anything you want to bring up? I've got a few things.
Well, you just go for the next one, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. We're basically done with French Olympic Week. It was a big one. There's plenty of sort of results and stuff going on. The Nacras, the Italians are back up the front. The Argentinians are there, but Ugolini and Giabelli. Jesus, that was terrible. I'm so sorry.
It was good. I thought you did really well.
They were the dominant team. It's good to see Banty and Tite, Tite and Banty back to the top. Oh, my pronunciation's just gone out the window, mate.
Yeah.
Our friend Emil, he was in fifth. There was some great video of him during the week with the Dash for Cash thing they did. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Go on.
Oh, I dominated it. They had this little Dash for Cash where €100 and super short course racing on a bunch of different boats, and he and his crew were so far in front that they missed the grab for the cash, and they had plenty of time to turn the boat around and go back and get the money. So yeah, on such a short course. So yeah, in the 470s, it looks like Geordie Chama is back in dominant form with Marta Cardona. So congratulations there. We unfortunately didn't do too well in the Aussies, but there's good strength in the UK and France and Italy. So those European nations are looking red hot going into the Olympics. We did have a good performance with a bit of reverse curse action going on in a couple of fleets. Obviously, in the Elka Sevens, Matty Wern, he's looking awesome, isn't he?
Oh, he's looking good again. He's had some time off. I did see some good footage of him winning the start and sort of just battling his way upwind. Some really good onboard footage of that. That was really cool to see.
The Italians, again, are a strong nation in the 49er FXs. So, oh, God. I can't do it, people.
Come on, I want to see it. Come on, go for it.
Guinciaglia and Schio. My wife's losing it in the background. And I'm so sorry to those sailors. I haven't met them, so I don't know, So
well, we're going to have to make a conscious effort of catching up with them. So just so that they can tell us how to pronounce their
I think
names.
you're right. I agree. I think they need to tell us off on the show. But to our friends Laura and Annie, the Aussies, congratulations, girls. Great performance.
Yes.
Speaking also in the Aussies, another good performance from Harry and Max. Those
Absolutely.
boys.
I was with Pricey yesterday, Harry's father and his mother Christiane, and they're off tomorrow to Quiberon to go to the next league
for the Worlds.
He's putting in some solid performances, obviously, and it's good to see. So yeah.
The Chinese won that one. So Wen and Liu.
Which is another cool thing. I mean, that's they're doing good, and there's two or three Chinese in the top 10 there.
Yeah, that's right. Plenty more classes. Obviously, a little biased while we're talking reverse curses. Congratulations, Gray, in the IQ foils. I don't really want to just keep going through all the fleets, but I sort of pushed myself into this now. I kind of have to do it. Marta Maggette.
Maybe we do a big cover next week because ultimately Quiberon will be underway, so it'll be a good chat.
I just want to highlight how well Italy are sailing. I think that we need to highlight that. The Italian team seems to be so very strong at the moment. So congratulations to everyone behind that team. You guys are doing an amazing job, and it's really, really noticeable. The other amazing team that's out there is the Magenta Project. I would suggest if you're a female sailor and you haven't registered with the Magenta Project, you should jump onto it because they have all sorts of amazing programs where they promote female sailing. And the latest thing that they've done, BP, is that they've actually just signed up with Swan and have got the Club Swan Racing Partnership where they'll be doing entering Magenta Project will be having full female team sailing Club Swans in their major events. So there'll be 2 all-female teams in the Club Swan 36s at the Four Nation League events this year. So that's pretty good. And I think we've also got another team going in the 28 as well. The Club Swan 28. They just did Pensacola. But yeah, that I reckon. Hey?
Exciting times for them. Looking forward to that.
Well, yeah, I think it's super cool. Magenta Project just do an amazing amount of work. It's we were there for the formation. We know all those ladies that put it together, and we're super proud of the amount of work they do. And they're people that get stuff done. We should get them on Barcarati to help us do our job better.
Oh, why not? Yeah, we should do something.
Yeah. But anyway,
so, all good. Well,
anything else you want to talk about?
Stevens, I guess, just touch base on Sailport Stevens again. I know we've ranted a little bit in the last week or so on it, but there was obviously the Commodores Cup finished, and there was some good results across the board. So I just want to run through those if you don't mind. In the fast 40s sort of division, if you like, we came third. So yeah, Natire, which is a Melgis 37. Scott Lawson, the owner, thanks to him and his partner Dave Ferguson. Great week. Revolver, which is Mike Ritchie, a fellow Barcaratian.
Cool.
Yep, absolutely cool boat on the water. Looks beautiful and a great thing. And then there was Condor, which was another Barcaratian, Shane Granieri involved. So pretty cool setup there. So all good fun. Hang on a sec. I'm just pushing buttons here and trying to work out.
I was going to be cheeky about Shane, but he gets grumpy with me, so I won't.
No, he's good. He was in good form, and I actually did mention with a few of the guys because it's my first real travelling regatta in Australia for years.
Yeah,
and you go away from the scene for a while and you come back, and it's not that it's the same old people talk and same old stories. There's a lot of new people, but It was good to see the familiar faces. So moving to ORC, which is a hotly contested fleet, Roadrunner, which is a Thompson 920, organised chaos, and Seeking Alpha, the Far 40, with our good mate Tommy Spithill at the back of the boat, and that was sailed absolutely fantastically. So
Very cool.
All good there. And then I guess the main reason for most people to go up there is to enjoy the surrounds. It's a week of passage racing around islands and around the serene bay, if you like, of Port Stephens, and so it attracts a very strong PHS fleet. So for people want to go sailing and utilise their boat at a level that the boat is sort of more suited to. This is a perfect regatta for them. So some results there. Banter, which is a Beneteau 45, 51st project in second for PHS, first 50. So you can see we're talking about cruiser races here. And then Jambo, which was a Summit King 40. So anyway, it was a great week. And so congratulations to all the winners and to all the participants. There you go.
Thanks, mate. I think that's us.
Yeah,
done for the week. We still managed to put it together without the part-timer. And if anyone out there is bumping into Bice, just call him the part-timer from now on, please, if you see him.
Part-time Bice.
Part-time Bice, yeah, PTB. Just walk past and go PTB, see how that goes. I love it. All right.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for listening to us, everyone. Good to see you again, my friend. And
happy Anzac weekend.
Yeah.
Australians and New Zealanders.
To all our service people, yeah, thanks for your service and happy days. Remember, if you're looking for corporate gear, jump on to our friends at Waikobi. If you need food, Radix Nutrition. If you want to get away from work and go sailing, disruptiveMarineMarketing.com.au. If you want to contact us, cheers@barkarati.com.
Cheers.
Cheers.